Good afternoon, Mr. Oswald. Thank you for being here. We've got 14 questions for you. Each board member will ask one, starting with Mrs. McQuinn. We'll go through, and then everybody will get to ask the second one, and the clock is there to help manage time. So, Mrs. McQuinn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Oswald.
Good afternoon.
With our limited resources, what will you do differently to attain the outcomes we expect for our students?
And good afternoon, board members, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today to become the next superintendent of Palm Beach County Schools. And before we get started, first I'd just like to take a moment and thank Dr. Avosa and how he's positioned our school district. We're in a much better place than we've ever been before. We now have a North Star, a strategic plan to follow. We need to continue this journey and this path to reach our long-term outcomes. I've been on the groundwork of development of this strategic plan and its execution, and that's how we're going to make better outcomes for our students. So when it comes to the limited resources, it goes back to the strategic plan and the work that we're doing. There aren't enough resources out there, and we've got to lead this by transparency. So our strategic plan has allowed us to stop some of the work that was not working and align our school system. So moving forward, we got to continue to be transparent on the budget process. So at first, if I'm chosen as superintendent, it's jumping in on the budget review process and reviewing with each of the departments what is it that they're doing, what are they not doing, and what can we stop doing so that we can align more resources to support our schools and our teachers. Also, that would be the process that we would take moving forward.
Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Oswald.
Good afternoon, Ms. Brill.
What do you consider to be your greatest strengths as a potential superintendent and your greatest weaknesses as a potential superintendent?
I think my greatest strength is probably my leadership style, that I'm one about servant leadership, that I'm a collaborative leader. I work with people who have different points of view and how they look at a particular issue, and then we sit and we problem solve to figure out what are the best solutions moving forward. Those that have worked with me throughout the years know that's how I work. Probably my biggest weaknesses is probably the fact that I'm a perfectionist. You look at my track record, I work hard, and I've got to work at making sure that I have a good life, personal life, and work balance.
Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Oswald. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to ask you about the purpose-built communities. Do you support public and private partnerships designed to raise support from the philanthropic communities, and how do you feel about project-based learning?
Purpose-based learning, purpose-built communities is just some amazing work that's going on throughout our country to really transform communities. So you're talking about 3 pillars. We're talking about wellness activities, so activities throughout our communities for any particular community where our parents can go for recreational activities. We're talking about affordable housing to build a good community. And then the last pillar for purpose-built communities is around good education, and that's where we play a part. So as far as private and public partnerships, absolutely. It's essential for our district to move forward that we have strong partnerships. I've been involved with numerous conversations around potential areas to start some purpose-built communities throughout our district and talking with a number of our partners in the community. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us moving forward in this space. When it comes to project-based learning, we've got to connect the real world for our kids into what's happening in our classrooms. And we've got some great innovation, some teachers who are leading this work, some principals who are leading this work, from the grassroots up, and we've got to continue to support that innovation.
Can you explain to me how you see your role fitting into this if you were selected around being the head of philanthropy or the forward-facing piece of this district?
Yeah, so already right now, I am the face, I'm working with a lot of our local funders on a regular basis that I sit and we talk about some of the issues and challenges that we're trying to solve, and they're working together with us. We've had some great work that's come about that. As superintendent, it's going to be really important that I am part of that community and working with our philanthropy, our local funders. Again, telling them about the challenges that we have as a school district and how do we solve those problems will be important, and me being the front face of that. And already working very closely with a lot of our partners. They know that, I'm here to solve those problems.
Mr. Barbieri.
Good afternoon, Mr. Oswald.
Good afternoon, Mr. Barbieri.
As you know, this board has had many discussions about the need to have an employee in each school whose only responsibility is to handle the social and emotional needs of our children. What plan would you put in place to provide support for students in crisis?
Yeah, that's really important work, especially with what's happening already, our multi-tiered systems of support. What we've already done in the past, we put a lot under my leadership, our school-based teams, our response to intervention, a lot of programs with stronger fidelity than we've ever had before in the past around that, making sure that we're connecting kids who are in need of additional supports to the right supports. After Sandy Hook, if you recall, we had a joint meeting with you all, the school board, our county commissioners, the Career Source, Children's Services Council Board, where we came together to talk about when kids go off track, how do we make sure that they get the right supports? That's really what you've heard about with the Birth to 22 movement over the last number of years. That was the work that I started here in this district. And because of that alignment we have with a lot of our community-based agencies, we have many more cooperative agreements where our school-based staff are able to connect kids who are falling through the cracks to the right support services. We just recently met again after this most recent tragedy, again, really pushing on our community partners of how do we get direct services right at the schoolhouse level. The reality is we have a limited budget. Do we want to get to a point where we have a single person to do that? Absolutely. But we've got to make that a priority in the budget. In the meantime, we've got to really work more closely with Birth to 22 and our other community partners to get those direct services back at the school. I remember when I was an elementary principal, we had these behavioral health professionals where they worked with kindergarten and first graders. There's a partnership with Boys Town. So when a kid was experiencing trauma and having a hard time, and it's hard to kind of reason with a kindergartner who's having a temper tantrum, but this behavioral health professional was able to take the kindergartner, work through his emotions, get him calmed down, and get him back in the classroom and not suspended. And then that case, through a case management style, that BHP worked with the whole family to provide additional resources to support. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach to make sure that we have it. Again, working with our community-based agencies, but also making priorities in our budget for our school district. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Oswald.
Ms. Andrews.
My question deals with succession planning. How would you put together a plan to develop a pipeline for future leaders, administrators, as well as teachers in this district?
Succession planning is a top priority for me. Experiencing extreme turnover at the central office in the last number of years. We've had key positions that have had a tremendous amount of turnover. We've got to create career profiles of each of our key positions, and then we've got to start early on grooming individuals who want to take on additional roles and responsibilities and train them earlier. So if I'm a principal at a school and I want to take on a director position, we need to start early on explaining what is the central office like. This building operates a lot different than other places, than at the schoolhouse. So how do we start preparing you there? Also, when we talk about career pathways for our teachers, we have such talented teachers here in Palm Beach County. that maybe they don't not necessarily want to take on a leadership role at the central office and leave the schoolhouse because they love being in the classroom working with the kids. How do we, and this is an area I really want to accelerate more quickly, so let's say I'm a fantastic AP history teacher, and I'm doing some great work, moving student achievement, but I like what I'm doing, but yeah, I'd like to take on a stronger leadership role. How do we provide some financial incentives to those teachers where we can reach out, let's say I'm going to borrow you for 5-10 days a year so that you can provide professional development for the rest of the teachers in our district and share your expertise. And then also maybe 5-10 days, you're opening up your classroom so other teachers can come into that room and see the magic and work that you're doing. Same thing at the elementary level. Maybe I'm great at small group instruction, guided reading, be what it may, and I have the data to show that I'm moving student achievement. Let's provide those financial incentives and accelerate that kind of work, and not necessarily have to pull teachers out and bring them into this district building to provide training.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Oswald.
Good afternoon, Dr. Robinson.
So we all know that reading is fundamental. So what will you do to accelerate the reading proficiency for each subgroup?
I'm going to go right back to our strategic plan. It was very clear in our plan that that was a priority, not just for us here based on our data, but for our community, especially when we look at early childhood. There's numerous initiatives that are focused on this. First, we came out with our pillars of effective instruction. What is the vision of what we should see when we walk into a classroom? So those pillars of effective instruction are already rolled out, talking about standards-based, engagement, high expectations for our kids and our adults, personalizing the learning that happens for those kids. So that's one piece of making sure that we have that clear vision of what we want to see in a classroom. There's the other initiative around pre-K to grade 2. Some really exciting work happening here. So we have a pilot right now that's happening in 16 of our schools, CKLA, Core Knowledge Language Arts. We have shared some of this with the board before. Core Knowledge Language Arts has gotten rated great reviews from Ed Reports because of its strong focus on phonics, vocabulary, fluency, it's content-based. Our teachers and our principals that are leading this work in these 16 schools have given us real positive feedback that they love it. They have the strong content and the scaffolding and resources. Our teachers have less to worry about what to teach, but can focus on how to teach. Also, at the same time, how we're affecting that, principal leadership is key in the instructional leadership. So they're a big key component of this and how we build their expertise to create the conditions that create that environment and supportive of what teachers are doing in the classroom. And then our last initiative is really around that pre-K work and expanding and enhancing pre-K opportunities and partnerships. So here, it's clear we don't have all the resources to provide every single child. We just don't get the funding. VPK dollars are very limited. There's school readiness dollars out there. So we've got to reach across the lines into our community-based programs and build stronger partnerships. It's not like the school district's coming in and try to take over and just run all of pre-K, but how do we elevate what we call quality education in our early childhood centers? And how do we provide greater clarity for our parents? What does it mean to be kindergarten ready? And then how do we reach across with our own resources or through our partnerships with Children's Services Council, Early Learning Coalition, to provide support and training to support those community-based agencies, just like the same expectations that we have in our own centers. And then we've got to look at the data. Are we closing those gaps? Through Dr. Vosa's leadership, we've been much more transparent how we control for race and gender and poverty to making sure if there's different groups that aren't making it, why aren't they making it, and let's get the right interventions to change it.
Mr. Oswald, share with us what you expect of us as a board as we look to move this district forward. That's a great question. So I think, especially within the first 30 days as a board, we're going to have to schedule a retreat and really sit down to clarify our roles and responsibilities and have a clear agenda when it comes to what is your expectations that you have on me and what do I have on you. Simple things is communication. How do you want to be communicated with? Phone calls, is it weekly?
meetings on a regular basis so that we can work very closely together. Key is going to be, an expectation for me is transparency. You know, as a board member, you're approached by people from the grocery store, phone calls, all the time. You can't just turn it off. And you receive a lot of feedback from our stakeholders. And I need to have that feedback as superintendent so I can move this district forward. So transparency on the issues, and then allowing me to take those issues to problem solve the issues we have here in our county to move forward and provide a better education for our kids.
Thank you. That concludes the first round, so we'll go back to Mrs. McQuinn to start the second round. Mrs. McQuinn.
How would you describe the current culture of our school district? Be specific. How will you keep a pulse on the system's climate and culture?
The culture of our school district, I think, has been pretty energized the last 2.5 years with a strategic plan, with a focus. We saw such tremendous input from our community in the creation of our strategic plan. I was at every one of those communities, and we had people showing up and giving their input of what they expect from us. Despite that, I think we still have challenges when it comes to the culture. You know, I think our principals want to see more communication with the superintendent and how they problem solve and addressing their issues to make sure it's being heard from the top leader of that of the school district. So I think it's going to be important to have really strong ties with our school principals who have a pulse on what's happening in their schools. Also with our teachers. Our teachers need to have stronger voice. They've had stronger voice in the past, and how do we continue to get their input? It's going to be really, really important. And all of our employees, from our bus drivers, our maintenance workers, we've made some good progress with Dr. Fenoy and the work that he's done in transportation, but how do we continue? And I think it's important to me as superintendent that I'm going to be meeting with these stakeholders on a regular basis to understand the issues that they're faced with so we can problem solve and improve the morale and the culture of our school. Palm Beach County is just an amazing place. Been here many years, and a lot of that's has been built on trust and being able to communicate about problems and solve those together. And we've got to make sure that we continue to do that.
All right, Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. Mr. Oswald, what is your philosophy on delegating authority? How do you then maintain accountability?
It comes down to clear expectations. People want to know what they're responsible for and what they have to do. And it's going to be real important that we are clear about those expectations. Going back to the strategic plan, we have done some amazing work this last year, really around project management, which we've never done before up here at the school district, about how do you manage these large, complex problems we're trying to solve. A lot of our employees here at the central office have gotten the training to lead that work more effectively. And that whole project management process is just laying much more clear expectations and around who's responsible for what. So as we delegate that out, and we've got a lot, and we're not using that just for the strategic planning process, we're using that all projects, because not all work falls within the strategic plan. But it's making us a more aligned school system. So how do we roll that up? And I know there's so much going on when we talk about the work, you know, our voters supporting the sales tax, and we talk about the number of capital projects we've got going on. We've got school security issues that we've got to address immediately. We've got to roll all that up into simple tools like a Gantt chart that we check in regularly, one with my direct reports, but then also as a cabinet, and that we have very clear conversations about what's on track, what's not on track. If things aren't on track, whoever's responsible for a particular project, how are we providing the right resources and support so that they can do their job effectively? And then coaching and providing that support so they move forward. So again, it's going to be about transparency, regular check-ins with the cabinet, and direct reports on those projects. Thank you.
Mr. Barbieri, or Mrs. Whitfield, sorry about that.
Mr. Oswald, please tell me how you would deal with criticism and conflict in this position should you be selected.
Well, I already do that already, so That's a good thing. So I've already had many experience of getting criticism and feedback. I mean, it's about transparency. Criticism is feedback, and we've got to be open. Dr. Avos has taught us that, feedback is a gift, and all of us need to be able to accept that and receive it and to act upon it to make change. So we've provided many opportunities in our community for feedback. We've got advisory committees across the board that allow for community input, for teacher input, employees input. I think we could do a better job of that. I think we need to go after that. We can't stray away from criticism, because usually when there's smoke, there's fire, so we need to go there and make sure that we address those issues.
Mr. Barbieri.
Mr. Oswald, Dr. Avosa has restructured the district into regions, and as you know, there is a regional superintendent and instructional superintendents. We also have an organizational chart which was substantially revised by Dr. Avosa. Please provide your thoughts as to whether you support the regional structure, what changes, not in personnel, but in structure only, that you believe should be made, if any, in the regional structure, and what changes, if any, you believe should be made in the organizational structure of the district.
When I was in New York City, we were on the cutting edge of the principal supervisory model. A lot of districts throughout our country have revised their approach to address that issue. First, it's a classroom teacher that we know that makes a difference in student achievement. Second to that, it's the principal. We had, with the changes in retirements and turnover in principals, how we coach them up and support them to do their work is critical work to move this district forward. So am I in support of that? Absolutely. It's key, though, with our principal supervisors that they have the right skill set to do that. So when it's done well, our principals love that work. But if not the right individual that's not providing the right support, then we've got to look and possibly get the right people. Also striking that right balance of how many schools, the principals, and striking that right balance of the skill set of the principal supervisor, that they're able to go in there and really help problem solve and work side by side with the principal to move their work forward. Structurally at the central office, been thinking a lot about that. If selected superintendent, there's different models that I think we could look at to ensure that we're providing the right support to our schools and to all of our employees. So those are things that I'm still reviewing at this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. The next question: what have you done to positively impact student achievement with the assistance of teachers, principals, parents, and the community? And can you give me some detail of successful efforts that you have used to narrow the achievement gap?
I'd like to address graduation because clearly that's an issue that's what we're here about, right? Graduating our kids. And over my tenure here at the central office, we've done a number of things to really address graduation. So I think I got here about 6 years ago. First, just reviewing our data when it came to kids who are not graduating for credits. So we instituted a credit recovery program, making sure that credit recovery opportunities are throughout the entire school day, not just after school, but during the day school as well. So that was one piece. When it came to the concordance score, so obviously kids need to have that end of course exam for algebra and the FSA. So that's where I think we lose the biggest number of kids. So we did a number of things there. We have a PERT Academy. So those kids who get the concordance score in the PERT, we started a PERT Academy that starts in May, where each of our high schools are providing kids opportunity to remediate some of those algebra skills and take the PERT throughout the month of May and then throughout the summer until they get that concordance score. Also, the SAT school day, an issue that was somewhat controversial at the time. We started where we offer the SAT on a school day for all juniors. And most recently, with Dr. Vosa's approval, we added the seniors who still needed that concordance score. But because we started that a number of years back, we had capturing more kids, not only for the concordance score to graduate, but also so that they're getting the scores that they need to get into college and universities that they want to get into. Every year, going back 6 years since I've been here at the center office, graduation rates continue to rise through issues like that. And now, if you look most recently, you're seeing elimination of achievement gaps when it comes to graduation, was just incredible that we're seeing that work happen. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Data shows a correlation between household income, wealth, and academic achievement. Data in Palm Beach County, as well as throughout the country, show that children living in poverty almost always underperform compared to their peers. We are the largest employer in Palm Beach County. So do you think it's in our best interest to end poverty? And if so, what is our role in doing so?
Well, first, if we say why is someone poor, it's probably because they don't have a job, right? Or they don't have a high-paying job. And we do play a critical role in that. First, we've had some really good conversations around vocational training. A lot of that work currently sits, especially in the adult ed world, currently sits with the post-second with Palm Beach State College. We've had some good conversation with Dr. Parker. How do we get more into that vocational training for our kids themselves? So the kids who are not on track maybe don't want to take that track to a college. So how do we get into that space and open up some of our, like our West Techs, possibly Roosevelt Full Service, and creating some vocational programs so our kids can go right into some high-paying jobs and support their families. Then also, how do we partner with Palm Beach State College in our vocational programs so our adults that are out there that are unemployed and expand what we're doing in adult education so that we can give the skill set to go right into the workforce. So those are some things I think that can take immediate attention to address that particular issue. And then our own employees. Dr. Vos has done a great job in getting our wages up for our employees, and we've got to continue to provide those type of opportunities so that we can retain our workforce here.
Share with us what you expect from us as a board as we move the district forward.
For you as a board, I think, again, as we move forward, it's going to be about transparency and tackling the challenges that lie ahead. We've got some very, very difficult decisions to make moving forward. We're talking about, one, just let's start off with school security. We've got to problem solve, work together as a united board in addressing those particular...
Sorry, I forgot this was second round. I was reading my question. A different question, so you did that one. Thank you, Mrs. Bass.
I thought it sounded familiar, but it just...
I was reading my script here and figured it was all set. So how do you address legislative issues, and what do you see your role and the board's role in dealing with the legislature, but also on how that impacts economic development in our county?
Yeah, we've got to take a stronger stance, I think, working with our legislatures. We've got to reach across party lines and really get our legislators to understand our local issues. When we look at what's coming down here again most recently, when we look at the budget that is being proposed, they're going to, again, force us to make tough decisions. So how we connect and work, we've got to look outside the box of the ways, because over the years it's only gotten worse. So how do we reach out, not just to our local legislative body, but for those throughout the entire state, and come together with other school boards as well on these issues? How do we connect? I know we've played a good role in there, working with other school boards. How do we work with them and their legislative bodies that are more in the northern part of the state? We're the economic engine for Palm Beach County, and so how we get them to understand that they need to support education and provide the funding that's needed for our schools is going to be critical moving forward.
All right, thank you very much. That concludes our questions. So closing statement, Mr. Oswald.
Again, I want to thank the board for the opportunity for be here with you today. I think it's important for the public just to know a little bit more about me, for those who have not worked with, and really start first with why I became an educator. Most teachers become educators because they want to make a difference in the world. And well, that is certainly true for me, but it was much more personal. My biological father, up until this day, never learned how to read. His disability put quite a strain on my family growing up. Having no high school diploma, he had to work 2 low-wage jobs just to make ends meet. And going out in public was also difficult, where he relied on us to read things for him. And that's why I became a special education teacher, to make a difference in the lives of children, especially those with learning difficulties. And so I got my degree, graduated from Buffalo State College, very cold city. And so I heard about this recruitment fair that was in Orlando, Florida, on the Great Florida Teach-In. My first interview was with our own Marcia Andrews. Miss Andrews told me what a wonderful place Palm Beach County was, and I didn't need to go on any other interviews. And so I didn't. And that was back in 1993, where I started my career off, and I started as a brand new teacher at Barton Elementary School, a very diverse school, just wonderful kids, great staff that we worked together, good climate. Yet our school also struggled. It was a struggling school. And I knew that I could have used additional support resources really to reach all my kids' needs. And so I knew if I wanted to make a greater impact, I'd have to go into a leadership role. And so I did. I got my master's and took on a couple of assistant principal positions and got my first principalship at South Grade Elementary School, a very special place. We created a single school culture focused on high expectations for adults and for students. Collaboration, strong professional development. We built a teaching workforce there that these teachers were just knocking out of the park, moving student achievement. The climate and behavior, being real clear expectations that we have for the kids. Our kids used to recite the Peacemaker Pledge every day. I promise to practice peace by following the Peacemaker rules. It's all about anti-bullying. They followed it every single day. So we took a school at that time, it had reopened, would have been considered an F school at that time, and we took that all the way to an A. I'm very proud of the employees and the group at that school and the work we did. Then I had an opportunity to go to New York City and lead and be a principal supervisor of 10 schools, a local instructional superintendent in the South Bronx. This was a time of great educational reform that was happening under the time of Joe Klein and Bloomberg. My regional superintendent, who's now the chief executive officer of the New York City Leadership Academy, Irma Zardoya, amazing leader. Our region was outpacing all the other regions in English language art test scores. Unfortunately, my mother had become ill, and she had relocated to South Florida. She had cancer, leukemia, and I returned back here to take care and provide support for her. And after her passing, I've been caretaking, my brother and myself, caretaking for my stepfather for well over 10 years. A very humbling experience for those who've ever been through that process, but very rewarding as well. So when I returned back here to South Florida, I took on a restructuring role, working with schools from the Glades to the coast, helping principals and teachers and staff really build capacity to provide better education for their kids. But I really wanted to get back to the principalship, and I've been part of conversations about what was going on at Boynton Beach High School, and the school was struggling. Principal was retiring at the time, and so I took the helm there at Boynton Beach High School. Again, creating something very special. Again, high expectations for teachers, for students, providing the right supports to really build the capacity of everybody. Clear expectations for our kids. We took a school, amazing facility, 6-time D school, and took that to a B time I left. Just amazing, amazing work that happened there, raising graduation rates. And then most recently, my work here at the central office. Over the last 6-7 years, during a lot of change in leadership, challenging times, student achievement continued to rise. Schools were still focused on the right work. Our teachers were focused. Our employees were focused. We still continue to move forward despite the challenges we had here centrally. And again, graduation rates going up every single year since I've been up here. So This community deserves a superintendent that's committed to this community. I've proven that over the last 2.5 decades over 20 years that I've been down here. I built strong relationships both at the schoolhouse and in the community. Relationships that are built on trust and working out problems. Those that have worked with me know that we're going to work together to solve the problems. A lot of feedback that I've gotten throughout this process is that I'm unable to make decisions. I want to be clear that I would not gotten this far if I can't make hard decisions. It's just with my leadership style, we've got to maintain relationships, and I do maintain relationships with individuals because we still have to work together to continue to move forward to provide a world-class education for our kids. Again, I want to thank the entire community that has been very supportive of me through this process to get me to this point. It's been a long day, and glad to see this coming over. But again, thank you to all the community for their support in getting me here at this point, and good luck on your decision making.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Does the board, do you all need a break for a couple minutes, or are we ready to go forward? Okay, at this point, Mr. Mitchell and Mrs. Williams will be back, and you'll walk us through